Welcome to Blue Monday with me, Les, Dave, and Rodger as ever. We're going to kick off. Well, it's transfer season, so we're going to look into a little bit of a transfer talk in this episode. But before we do, Roberto Martinez won a trophy last night.
Delighted for him. What a manager! Absolutely phenomenal. It's brilliant. He's a good lad. He got us to 2 cup semi-finals. Who's done that since 2016? No.
He also got us finishing 11th twice with the best squad we've arguably had this century. So I'm not a fan.
11th. I mean, that's high altitude stuff in recent years.
Yeah. I've already had one mate on at me like, if we'd have kept him and give him all this money, I'm convinced he would have relegated us. But Dave, what are your thoughts on Martinez?
Do you know what? Similar to Marco Silva, really, I had a lot of sympathy with him. Maybe not. I feel more sorry for him than I did for Silva because he missed out on getting all the cash from Machiri. I mean, it's that sort of sliding doors moment, isn't it, with him? Because he didn't get the money, Moyes didn't get the money. Unfortunately, it was spent ridiculously poorly. Who'd have known what would have happened if he'd have gone on? Because it was literally that summer, wasn't it, after he got sacked when Machiri came in?
Yeah. Do you think
he came in the February? Machiri came in February 2016, and Roberto took us to the 2 semis that, just before we'd already lost the semis to Man City with that horrendous Raheem Sterling 3 yards out of play, cutting it back when we were 3-1 up on aggregate because Ross had given us the lead, and then we lost controversially to United. Rom missed a penalty, didn't he?
Yeah,
in 2016.
That was. I don't think I've seen a game where the players miss more chances than Lukaku in that one. That
Wayne
being down.
Rooney cleared one off the line, didn't he?
He was, sorry.
Wayne Rooney cleared one off the line.
He did, yeah. And every single time. It was like that, and then De La Feu come on, didn't he? And forced them to score an own goal. And I thought that's going to be our night now. And then obviously that Martial goal at the end was just heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. And then coming out of the concourse around, I don't want to talk about
it. Fair enough. I just think the man's a footballing terrorist and should never have been anywhere near us. But that's another story for another time, maybe.
I tell you what, it was a tactical masterclass last night against Spain. Spain were bossing them, and then he made some subs, and he uses those resources really, really well. I think he deserves credit for it. I really do.
Can we not say, though, I mean, it's the first time I've looked at a glorified international friendly and thought, do you know what? It was actually decent seeing that. And the 5-4 with Spain and France.
Oh, what a game.
Last week. Dare I say it made it look like they were actually competing for something. Ever since it was made, Nations League, and, you can get, I don't know, it affects, in some way or shape or form, it affects the seedings, doesn't it, to the Euros, and you can qualify in one way or another, but it seems as if FIFA seems to want every single team in the world to go in every single tournament, don't they? So
that's the way it's going.
But watching those 2 games was great. It's sort of, I felt like you're trying to kick the can down the road with the season still being on as much as you possibly can. So there's a short wait between now and the start of the new one when we get to Bramley-Moore. And of course, is it Friday? No, it's Thursday when the fixtures come out, isn't it, this week?
Are they out this? Oh, yeah, will be, won't it?
12th of June, yeah.
What's the first one you look for? It's the first derby for me. Well, the first game for me, to be honest, and then the first derby.
I mean, the first derby always, it tends to be, the first one tends to be at Goodison, doesn't it? It's only been the last couple of times over the last, I don't know, maybe we've had 2 or 3 over the last couple of decades, but the first one tends to be at Goodison in autumn, and then their place in February, March time. I'd like it to be the other way around. I'd like us to have the second one at Goodison, like last season, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I don't know whether I want to get the bigger teams, in inverted commas, out of the way at Bramley-Moore, because I think we're going to be on the crest of a wave, no pun intended, with the new potential kit that we've seen linked, and the rumoured ones which has got the Mersey on it. I don't know what you guys think of that. Could potentially be the new kit. But yeah, I mean, it'd be nice because, I mean, if you got, I don't know, United, even Spurs, I know they were all. We've had the chat about these guys and how poor they've been in the Premier League. But if you get one of those at Chelsea or something like that on the opening day of the season, I mean, that really puts a marker down if you can go and beat them. And can you imagine what the atmosphere would be like on the opening day of the season?
Yeah, it's Friday night. We've already said that. It's going to be Friday night, and it's going to be Burnley at home. and we'll draw 0-0.
I always
Missing a last-minute penalty.
Opening game of the season.
Southampton had to get a witching or something, didn't he? Because they felt the stadium was cursed because they didn't win in 12.
They couldn't win for ages, could they?
They got a witch in and someone else who's like, holy water and all that around the place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to happen, isn't it? Yeah, I just think with opening games of the season, I prefer to not have a massive team because I think the opening, be different this season because I think we'll be away, at least for the first game. Because I think we've had the last 5 years at home. So we're due one anyway. And, obviously with the new ground and that you normally do, if you're going into a new ground, you normally do sort of start away. So maybe because not the opening day of the season. I always think the opening day, that's got its own special atmosphere, hasn't it? Which I think that the opening of the new ground will as well. There'll be a buzz. So I think if you do have a sort of a mid-table team where, whereby if you play them in December, there's just going to be no atmosphere anyway. Probably best to do that for me, I think, because the big games like United and Liverpool get the big atmospheres anyway. And we've never played Liverpool on the opening day, have we? That's never been a fixture, has it?
No, not to my knowledge.
No, we've had United, we've had Chelsea, we've had Arsenal.
Wasn't it Rooney's debut? Didn't Rooney make his debut for United at Goodison? Didn't he?
I think he might well have. I know. Obviously,
I remember that. I was at the cricket in Manchester that day. I remember, and it was pissing down, and I watched the game. Wasn't it a lunchtime kickoff? And did he not score? And it was pissing down in Manchester. And we watched the game in some working men's club around the corner from Old Trafford cricket ground. I'm sure he.
Yeah, we lost 2-0, 12:45 kickoff.
Yeah, and he scored.
2005-06 season. We lost 2-0
for them. Rooney scored.
Yeah, I have blocked that one out of my mind. I think I remember it now. Yeah, but
is that when he scored your end, the park end there, and he started like I mean, that's, I know we're going over the old ground here, but that's when we were talking about legends and things like that, wasn't it? At the end of the final day of the season, do you still class Rooney as a legend and all that?
Yes.
But do you think back to when he was doing all of that? And then I think when he scored when I think they won 4-2 against us or 4-3, something like that. He scored, didn't he? And he was giving it loads to the park end. It's easily forgotten, isn't it, when you think you created the prodigy that'll go on to be England's record goal scorer. When he's standing next to Tony Bellew and Duncan Ferguson at the Gladys Street, it's easy for you to look the other way.
Yeah, I think the thing that really irritated me was that the whole time he was there, as good as he was always their pet scouser. It was just really quite demeaning, I thought. It was like they'd taken him on as some sort of like mascot because he was a scouser. I don't know. It never happened.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think it was almost like we've changed him. He's not a scouser anymore. He's one of us, kind of thing. And it got quite sickening that. What got me as well. I mean, I sort of made peace with it quite quickly with Rooney because I thought, well, he's never going to succeed with us. The sort of state we were in. I mean, let's be honest.
Ironically, though, we might have done because if you look at that season after where we finished fourth, the impact he could have had on that tight-knit squad, had it not all fallen apart, because I know in the Man City game in particular the season before, the team was falling apart. There was a lot of people falling out. I think he'd had enough because he thought he was so much better than everyone. But I think he was getting to that point where he thought he was, which is never a good thing. But, you look at the impact Gerrard had on that 2005 team at Liverpool, which was not a good team. Yeah. He dragged them through that season and, the cup final in particular. Rooney could possibly have had the same impact on that team. We had a solid defence that, clean sheets were our stock in trade that season. That's what got us to fourth. Basically, if we'd have had something up front who could produce magic, you don't know. And I think that's what's always frustrated me about that.
It's all circumstantial for Wayne, though. I mean, he was a talented player. He was the best of his generation. And he was going to go and play for the best club that could offer him the best. I mean, it was all spun ridiculously by Ken Wright. That, he wants to leave and his family and his agent and all of that. It was just bullshit, And I think Wayne's really sincere. And I liked what he said on the final day. And I loved it when he came back. And his goal against West Ham from the halfway line is one of my favourite Goodison memories. He's a wonderful footballer. He's one of ours. The fact that he spent 80% of his career at Man United, well, it's just the way it was because we were on our uppers. We were going to go bust, for God's sake, if it wasn't for 30 million we got for him.
One other thing with him as well, I think he's a really good pundit as well.
Yeah.
You really did not expect that because let's face it, when he first came out and signed his contract alongside Tony Hibbert, we were looking like he can barely put two words together. But you look at him now and he can't talk. Even when he was at Plymouth, when he's had the nightmare as a manager, which, I think that might be the end of it now, mightn't it? Given what he's gone and done managerial, it's just not for him, it doesn't seem. When you see him punditry and things, he seems to properly come out of his shell a little bit. As much as I've been surprised about Big Dunk as well, I think he's a brilliant pundit. I know he's ever done our games, but I think he's a really good talker. I think analytically he gets his mind into it. Be interesting if those two had their own little podcast or something, wouldn't it? Can you imagine that?
Big Dunk. Get them on here, definitely. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Has anyone read this book yet, by the way, Big Dunk?
What's that?
Anyone read this book yet?
No, have you?
No, strangely enough, no.
I've got his book, which I'm sort of seeing it as one of those that you take on your holiday and just sit by a pool and read.
Yeah.
But I don't know what particular time I want to dive into it, to be honest, because I don't know. I've got feelings towards it, thinking part of it will infuriate me if he starts talking about going to Tenerife, or where it was when he used to get his traditional booking around Christmas, so he'd go and spend a few weeks there.
Yeah, he loved the festive season, Big Dunk, didn't he?
Yeah.
Someone else who loves the festive season and loves every season, I think, because he always seems to be on the lash these days, is Jack Grealish. And there's heavy links with Everton. Well, I say heavy links. It feels to me a little bit like he's available, and a lot of people are saying he should go to Everton. It's a no from me, I think. Because I think the last thing this team needs is a slow winger who's got a bit of quality on the ball, which he is. He's a very good player, but he's got no pace, and this team needs pace, doesn't it? And one thing I think as well is, the argument goes he's better than what we've got, which he certainly is in most cases. But who does he displace in that front line now? Because I don't think he replaces Ndiaye, because he brings a bit of pace and that spark down the left. Down the middle, potentially, but then you've got Alcaraz there. And on the right, if you put Dwight McNeil out there, now, he's not the fastest, but you've seen in his goal involvements how key he is to this team. Like when he came back, and like we talked about it last week, didn't we, Rodger? The first 6 seconds of football he had coming back from the injury, he played Decore through and scored, or something like that. So he's a vital player who's very much in it. I know he's not as good as Grealish, but he's very much in that mould whereby he's not got much pace, but he's got a really good eye for like a pass and goal. Rog, where are you on this? It's not for me.
I don't think it's for me really either, and I don't think it's anything like realistic. If we want to be a serious, really, we're not going to buy him, clearly, are we?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. We can't afford. What do they want for him? 60, 70? I don't know. What's his current wages? 200 grand a week? We're going to pay half of them on loan? Really? No. Is it? Well, I can't see it really. I don't think it's the biggest hole in our squad. I think he's a good player and I do like him. And he's lost his way under Pep completely. He's been turned into a robot. He jig-jogs down the side, looks at the fullback, decides he can't be asked and passes it inside. And he just does that all the time. It's terrible to watch. Doesn't take a man on anymore. I'd have thought his most likely destination is back to Villa. I'd have thought, he'd go back there and maybe rekindle some of his passion for the game. I don't think it's a good use of our whatever our resources are. I'm sure they're limited, but I think it would be a bit of a waste, and I can't see it happening. I think it's media speculation. I'm much more interested in Tierno Barry from Villarreal, who, looking at the club's website today, in the very, very informative "What the Papers Say" section of the club's website. Please don't. Why do we still put that up there? Don't know. But he's a French striker at Villarreal who scored 11 goals. And apparently, according to a Spanish radio station, we're interested in him. And we might be interested in a guy called Albert Goodmanson, who's 63 and who's been on loan at Fiorentina from Genoa. He's an Icelandic international. This is from the Papers Say on evertonfc.com. Check it out. Idiot. Can't get to sleep at night.
I was thinking you just in my mind then. I thought you were saying Article Johnson.
No, he's older than Article Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a strange little feature on the Everton website, isn't it?
Yeah, I have a real issue with Idaho Johnson because he missed that. He was inches away from putting Liverpool out of that year when they won the Champions League. Anyone remember like the last kick of the game? And he put it wide, and it was like that was it. Then you knew the name was on the trophy. Then didn't you, the bastards?
Yeah, So Albert Goodman's finished 24 matches, 6 goals, 1 assist, and 2 yellow cards. So,
well, I mean, I think taking this in a bit of a deeper direction. First of all, I'd have Jack Grealish, which is, I think I'm in the small percentage of fans that would. Maybe I'm a little bit looking at it like a bit of a glorified signing. Manchester City player that's won the absolute lot. He's 29. One thing I'll take away from what you said is it doesn't bother me about the drinking stuff and what he does away from, because it doesn't seem to have had any negative effect on his playing ability. Seems, again, something else away from on the pitch. He seems like a fantastic lad as well. Everything I've ever seen, he's a brilliant thing. Obviously, everyone in the community has adored him. On the pitch, I think he's a top-class player. Where I take you, what you've both said in regards to how he plays and where he'd fit in, I think that's the issue that I'd have with getting him. As a talented player, someone at 29, he's still in his peak. I think it's really easy to look at a player like that, given his value, given his wages, and think, oh, he's past it. He's coming to us for one final payday. I don't see him like that. I think he's at the top of his game still. He doesn't get a game under Guardiola because of Doku, mostly, who just looks like he's electrifying, isn't he, that lad? I think he's frustrating at times when you look at him, and I'm thinking, well, why isn't Grealish getting on early? But there seems to be a little bit of a personal issue between him and Pep Guardiola. But like you say, guys, I mean, I think the fee is just ridiculous, and I think if you're looking at Everton, you are seeing what I've said since the new owners came in, and that is Moshiri would probably have him in an Everton shirt by now, and that's why we shouldn't. It's a glorified signing, and I'd love to see work out, but I don't think it would. So there's a little bit of me that would lean towards him and say, yeah, I'd like to see this lad. But going back to your point there, I think you've got McNeil here, who I'm quite eager to see how he's going to develop. I know he's been injured for most of the season, but how he'll develop into that sort of front three we were talking about, behind whoever's up front, with a big question mark on that, which I think we'll get onto anyway. But when you've got McNeil, when you've got Alcaraz, and when you've got Ndai, I think you've got real potential of a side that is firstly really good on the counter-attack, has some pace, which is what we sincerely lack. And then, you piece all that together by having an appropriate striker. And interestingly, you might well have seen on my social in the last couple of weeks, I have not ripped Beto apart, but I was talking to some guy who absolutely decided to rip me apart because he seems to claim that I said he's crap. I don't think Beto's crap. I just don't think Beto's the answer that I want to see play 30-plus games as our striker. If you told me that was the case right now, I think Tony Scott's at this point as well, which is an excellent, much more succinct way of saying it than I did. Would you have Beto come in a year's time, and we're talking about him playing 30-plus games? Would you take that right now? My answer is no. Okay,
on that, I mean, I think it's fair to say we've all said Beto's crap at some point, because he has been crap at many points during his 2 years at Everton, which I think's fair enough. You can criticise a player because he's not been good. But sort of to the flip side of that is, a lot of that time he was getting the ball pinged up towards his head, which Sean Dyche is just get it up sort of tactics. Now, you look at that goal he scored against Newcastle when we beat them 3-0. Nice, I think it was about 20-odd passes, played him in, he ran in on goal. He scored his goal, like you always say, Dave. He's got his goal that he scores. And I think given the end to the season he had last year, under Moyes playing to his strengths, okay, he still missed chances, but all strikers do. I think we could do a lot worse than start with him. That's a massive 180 from me, because I've said I don't think he's that good. But in fairness, given his stats towards the end of last season, I don't know. I think it's worth a chance. I think it takes a little bit of pressure off. We do need another striker, clearly, but I think it takes a little bit of pressure off. And I think we can look at other parts of the squad. Like, we'll go into this in a minute, where you think the key signing is going to be. I think we need a fast right back. I think we need someone, a full back, who can overlap and bomb it down that wing. And I think that opens up a whole new area of play. We saw towards the end of last season, Mykolenko was getting forward a lot more. Mykolenko was crossing the ball in a lot more than he ever has done. And it got a lot of joy down that left-hand side. I think if we can replicate that down the right, I think that's the focus, I think, where our first transfer should come now. Obviously, everyone else will have different views, but that's my view on it. Rog, where are you on that with Beto and potential key signings for this squad?
I think Beto has earned our respect, and he's earned our respect not just because he's a nice chap who runs around a lot and puts sweat on the shirt. We as Evertonians do want more than sweat on the shirt. Thank you very much. That's such a patronising line that manager after manager has trotted out. His stats and his goal scoring stats were impressive in the second half of the season. He improved as a player under Moyes because the style of play suited him. That's why he scored a lot of similar goals. You know, it's a bit like DCL under Carlo Ancelotti. Stay in the box, tap in, one touch goal, pretend you're Inzaghi. There you go. Look, hurrah, goal. So, yeah, I think he's got a role, but I think it's a squad role, and I don't want him to be necessarily the main striker. I wouldn't be, too upset if he did start the first game of the season, but I think we need someone to give him real competition, and for that player who comes in, for Beto to give that player competition. So I don't think he can't start, but I wouldn't want him to be our only starting option, if that makes sense. And I don't think we have another one. Chimiti isn't ready to start. DCL is off, I think, officially, unofficially, leaked, not leaked, who knows? Not on the club website yet. Maybe, don't know. I think we need another main striker, whether it's someone who's good back to goal or whether it's someone who needs the ball played onto him to run onto, Lineker-esque, that kind of, the through balls that were going to be good on the counter-attack. Then like that goal against Crystal Palace where he's running, Alcaraz gets the ball's played into space and he scores. Do we need another striker who's going to run on like that? Or do we need someone who can hold the ball up and get runners on beyond him? Or do we need a smaller, more nimble striker who can play across the front three? A Sadio Mane type, not Sadio Mane, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We definitely need another person to challenge for a starting position in at the top of the pitch.
That is an interesting one on the type. So sorry, Dave, I'll bring you in now. On the type of striker there, because you do think if we do get someone who can hold up the ball, well, which Beto was doing better towards the end of the season, but it's clearly not his game. If you did get someone who could do that, if you can get that, like we were talking about, the front three behind them who we've got there, and Dye, McNeil, let's say, and Alcaraz, they've all got goals in them, so that could really unlock a lot of goal scoring potential there. So I don't know, Dave. Sorry, I'll come back to you. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. In that you're going to get more benefit from Beto, given what goes on around him, and I think that's like quite a high percentage of how you're going to see a lot from his game, and more chances for him. And like you say, I wouldn't say clinical. I'd probably say you're probably in that category, isn't he? If he's scoring 1 and 2 under David Moyes, then by crack on, keep there. Don't mind him being starting games. I think we've seen enough of him in the last 2 years, for me personally, to think that he shouldn't be Everton's number 9 in traditional number 9. I think. I mean, I was reading a piece by Kieran Maguire, who we're probably going to get out on the show in the coming weeks. And he said Everton don't have a problem, wouldn't have an issue to sign a player 40 for 50 million. And I think on the piece he's done with the BBC, it's like, well, everybody looks, and I've sort of hinted at that with Grealish, really, so I'm probably going back on myself here, but everybody wants a marquee signing when you're starting something new, your club, new stadium, everything that goes around it, all this positive vibe that we're getting from what's going on with the club. Everybody wants to sort of, the cherry on the icing of the cake is getting a marquee signing, a big name that comes in, and we're all looking at it like, wow, like James Rodriguez, something like that, which probably might well be detrimental to the way in which we're looking, the way in which you want to structure everything that's going on here. You've got to be prudent in this market, going into the new campaign. And I think, a lot of people were critical of, well, let's go and dive into the Championship, see if we can look at what they've got there. And a lot of people started turning their nose up at that. And I don't really understand that, because David Moyes has got an excellent record of going and doing that. You'd hope. I know, Roger, we were having a chat on our WhatsApp group about, the potential in terms of the academy and the restructure that we've hinted at in weeks gone by. I'd like to think he's done the due diligence of that, having a look around. And you mentioned at the start there these other lads from abroad. I'd like us to bring somebody in there. I mean, I won't go as far as saying we're bargain shopping, but you need to get value for money here, and sort of lean back a little bit and take some sort of context of why you want to get somebody in who you're not throwing all sorts of money at, who you're not looking at and thinking, well, yeah, there's our talisman there. We're going to put all our faith in that striker, given that you've got, like you rightly mentioned there, Les, the three behind them are going to create chances, and hopefully you're getting, I mean, just imagine we're saying we get into double figures with 4 players. Everton are looking at Europe there. So, I mean, I don't think we're that far away from it with the 3. Maybe McNeil struggles to get the 10, but I could see Alcaraz, and Dye did last season, didn't he? Yeah. Get into double figures. I could see that happening. So, with that, I'm sort of talking myself into thinking we don't need that much. But you mentioned right back. I'm adamant you've got to go and get a striker in, and that's not away from Beto, which people will be screaming listening to the podcast saying it is, and I'm criticising him. I just feel like we need somebody who's more versatile, like Rodger hinted at there. I think we mentioned Ollie Watkins, somebody like that a little bit. Somebody who can sort of polish and get into there. I mean, he had a great career, didn't he? Lower levels, worked his way up with Brentford, and then now he's ended up at a Champions League, or should have been Champions League qualifying side. So, I just want the club to do its diligence there, and make sure that they sort of have a good look before they dive in head first.
Well, I was foolish enough yesterday morning to catch up on, I've been series linking the Big Match Revisited because it was 84-85 season. And I watched a couple of the episodes containing Everton. There was a home match against Newcastle and a home match against Watford were the 2 games. We won both 4-0, I think. And as well as marvelling at some of the advertising boards for Higsons and the like, and looking at the fences and the kids sat through the fences in the Gladys Street, and the old Park End, and Everton and Celtic half and half, beanies or bobble hats in the crowd, which took me back. I was amazed at the quality of the football we played then. And what I took away from it was 3 things. Number 1, we got the ball in midfield and we passed it forwards, right? So let's try and do more of that. I want players who can pass the ball forward. Coming onto the front line, the number of times in this match, one, Gray and Sharp were playing, the other, Heath played, and then Heath got injured against Sheffield Wednesday, didn't he? That dreadful foul by Marwood. But my point was, Gray would come out and cross it from the left, and Sharp would come out and cross it from the right. And everybody was trying to get the ball forward as quickly as possible. There was lots of movement, and it wasn't just lump it forward to the big man, Sharp or Gray, to get ahead on it. Everybody was changing position. I saw the game against Watford. I think Gary Stevens scored 2 goals, right back, goal scoring right back. He didn't score many, did he, that Gary Stevens? But my point was, there was a real fluidity to the play. And I don't think we need to. And I think Moyes is an intelligent enough player. If you look back at, his West Ham team, you had Michael Antonio at the top of the pitch, but he's always had players running off them and goals spread across. And I just thought, looking back at that 85 team with, Sheedy and Stephen, and they weren't always, Sheedy wasn't always on the left. Stephen wasn't always on the right. Peter Reid was one of the most attacking players in both matches. He got the ball, he carried it forward. Let's see players who can do that. And so there are different ways of scoring goals, and it doesn't just need, let's get a 25 goal a season striker. If you spread them around and people are interchange, some of the best Liverpool teams in recent years with that front 3 of Firmino, Salah, and Mane, you didn't know where to look because they were all over the place. And I'd like to think that that's the kind of football we can see at the new stadium, which isn't rigid, which has, players aren't necessarily playing in fixed positions. And I don't think Ndiaye or Alcaraz are fixed position players. I think they can go anywhere. Alcaraz could be a midfielder, or he could be in number 10. When I say a holding midfielder, central midfielder, taking the ball forward, he could be a 6, an 8, or a 10. People might say maybe not a 6, but. And Ndiaye can be a 10, or Ndiaye can be a wide striker. So you got options. I just wonder who's doing that due diligence. That's my concern, because our football operations team has disappeared and none of them have been replaced. Thelwell's off sorting Rangers out. Good luck with that one. Dan Purdy's buggered off. Gareth Prosser, the head of the academy, has disappeared, although he's still on the website. James Vaughan is disappearing, although he's still on the website. Who's doing it? I haven't seen any football operations appointments. Maybe I've missed that. Maybe it's just David Moyes and, Angus Kinnear on a sunbed somewhere looking at some YouTube clips. Don't know. But we should have a good opportunity here to add 3 or 4 attack-minded players, not necessarily in attacking positions, as you say. An attacking right-back would be excellent. A ball-playing midfielder who'll play it forward first time, all the time. Look at Howson last night of Spain, ex-Bournemouth, gone to Real Madrid. He got the ball at centre-back, passed it 40 yards straight up the pitch every time, or as often as he could. So look to pass the ball forward. And scoring goals is not just about, a centre-forward. End of rant. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you made some excellent points there. I mean, you mentioned Liverpool on the front three that they've had. It does go towards me with a wry smile there when I look at me my red friends there who are still adamant that Darwin Núñez will come good, or he is good. And the reason why he could be a top class striker, but when you look at Liverpool's success under Klopp, they didn't have a number 9. They didn't have a big lad in the middle. They didn't have any of that. They had 3 whippets who could interchange. I know you normally had Salah on the right-hand side. It was deadly, as we know. But like you say, Firmino, they had Mane there, brought Jota in the sort of more recent years and things like that. They didn't look necessarily at a rush, a player like that. I thought it was astonishing that he went and got Darwin Núñez, particularly with the price, because he's ended up crap, hasn't he? Which has been funny to see. But if you're looking at something that you want to stick with and have that as the foundation of what you want to kick on and do for the coming years, then you don't go and do that. So what we've said there about trying to get a forward there who can be more versatile than what we've got in Beto, be more versatile than what we've got or not got in Calvert-Lewin, you go and do that, and there's a blueprint going forward there. The days gone now where we refer to 84, 87, where you've got, Everton winning scraps and throwing in crosses into the box, or would you say that there's a bit of a limitation to that these days in the game? I mean, the teams that are successful don't have a number 9, do they?
I think it's easy to say like it was different then, because it was, it's a different game. Now, I think even over the last 20 years, the game's changed immeasurably. But I think one basic thing remains the same: is you get the ball forward quickly and intelligently, not just get it forward quickly and lump it up, quickly and intelligently. And if you've got players in that front 3, front 4, who, like Rodger said, can interchange, I mean, that's never been any different. If you can get the ball forward quickly to intelligent players, you're doing all right there. You will do well.
Absolutely.
And I think, I don't want to get ahead of myself here and think, oh God, this team's great. But I do think in that front 3 that we've spoken about, behind the striker, they are interchangeable. There is room for the 3 of them, even Dwight McNeil, to cause chaos there, because they can switch flanks, they can go down the middle. And I do think, although, like Rodger said, and I said Beto's earned our respect because he's had a really good end to the season. And I think, if he does start the campaign, that's fair enough because he's earned it. We definitely do need another striker, at least, because you need, if there's 1 or 2 striking positions, you need at least 3 strikers, I think, to fill in that position. So
look at the top teams. Sorry, Les. Just look at the very top of the game. Look at Barcelona with Yamal and Rafinha and maybe Lewandowski through the middle. Look at Real Madrid with Mbappe and Rodrigo and Vinny, and then Bellingham behind them. Look at that PSG team and how much better that was than Inter Milan, because it had options, didn't it? It had multiple attacking options, not just everything through Lautaro Martinez. And as you say, watching France, Spain, even Portugal. I mean, I know Ronaldo was at the top of the pitch, but they did have other players who were carrying a threat at the top of the pitch. And it's not about a focal point. The game is not about a focal point anymore. It's about options and it's about pace. You look at Brentford, look at Mbomo. That's why people want to assign him. Wide player scoring goals, Wissa scoring goals. They're not natural number 9s, but they get the ball forward and they finish quickly. Look at Semenyo. Look at, these are the sorts of players we need to be bringing in.
That's an excellent point there. And, you mentioned of those various sides that are obviously at the highest level of the game. The other thing that we haven't added to that, a little bit of a facet that you need with having those three that we've mentioned there, is replacements. And, we've let, for all the criticism and sitting here slagging them off all day, we could comfortably do that with what they've done or not done for us in Lindstrom and Harrison gone. You've got nobody really to come in and replace these lads. All of them aren't going to last 40-odd games.
No, of course not.
Exactly. So, you're looking at that as somebody else you can get in there. Well, let's face it, they're not going to be equally as good. If we go and do that, fantastic. If our recruitment team all of a sudden become the best in the world, like, the Lords at Brighton, for instance, if we go and do something similar than that, then absolutely we'd all be celebrating, wouldn't we? But I doubt that's going to be the case. So that's something else there in terms of transfers that we need to go and do. You mentioned the right back coming in there, Les, which I think I completely agree with you. If that's at the top of your list, I completely understand that. But having a squad here, I think we've spent most of this talking about basically at 11. Maybe if you interchange whoever you've got there with Beto. But if we're sort of focusing on those front three behind the striker, you have to have replacements there. And goes to the academy that we've spoken to and being quite critical of, and rightly so. There's nothing really from there that I'm looking at, or anyone who you'd think, well, they can come in and they're going to save us a few quid in what we've got in the coffers.
Just on that then, so we do need a squad, definitely, because there's a lot of players leaving, and obviously, like, you need replacements for injuries. You need players to keep pressure on other players to sort of keep their levels up. Rodger, you touched on it before. Is it a little bit worrying that there's nothing sort of behind the scenes that we know about? We don't know what's going on. We were hopeful that maybe, all these positions would be filled by the new owners. It seems all of the attention is on the ground and getting that finished and getting that done and getting that boxed off ready for the new season. But, we need a team to play in it. And it's like you say, still the old sort of recruitment team is still on the website. We don't really know what's going on. It's gone quiet and we haven't really got time to waste, have we?
We haven't, but I think, TFG's way of operating is apparently just being quiet and getting on with it. But the only major appointments have been chief marketing and digital officer and someone in charge of a chief stadium commercial officer who spent 20 years at Chelsea. I would suggest that the client base at Chelsea Stadium are slightly different to the client base at the Everton Stadium. I've also noticed that across all media now, the club refer to it as Hill Dickinson Stadium, not even the Hill Dickinson Stadium, not even the Hill Dickinson Everton Stadium. It's Hill Dickinson Stadium, which grates a little bit. Doesn't really sound, it sounds a bit peculiar. I am worried about that, I have to be honest. I mean, Kinnear has obviously got a good reputation. He's got experience, and he's got this guy, Nick Hammond, in, who's apparently a tough negotiator. But I don't know who's doing the scouting and who's doing the data analysis. There's this story that we're moving to a wider sporting leadership model, whatever that means. The very wise Paddy Boylan tells us that it involves a structure of footy operations, talent ID, and strategy and analytics. I'm sure he's right, but I have no idea who's fulfilling those roles and what their level of experience and speciality is. So it is a bit worrying because we've got gaps in the squad. Let's hope that things are going on. Let's hope that there is a plan. And I just want something. We've talked, haven't we, about, wanting our Everton back. No. We want a new Everton. And with a new Everton, things have to change. There has to be change. Not all change will just be through evolution and just letting things happen. And slowly but surely, there has to be a change. And I'm afraid I still see a Denise Barrett-Baxendale style of communication from the club, which is patting itself on the back at every opportunity. Some of the stuff about the new stadium is marketing, commercial speak, corporate speak of brochureware, as if they're selling, some sort of, I know it's an entertainment venue, but it's a football stadium first and foremost, and we need good football to be played in it in order to keep people entertained. You're not going to say, let's get down the Everton Stadium to have some nice salt and pepper fries, or in this wonderful themed historic fan-focused restaurant. Bullshit. Stop the bullshit and give us some, something we can get our teeth into. Give us some exciting signings and some idea that there is a football structure, a brand new football structure, because the old one was rubbish. Clearly, those people, the latest incumbents, did not perform. That's why they're leaving. That's good. I applaud that. I applaud that change in personnel. I'm just slightly concerned, and only slightly. Don't go off the deep end yet because it's only June. That I don't see new people coming in to fill those roles. It may well be happening, but I don't see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've still got. I mean, it's 3 weeks, isn't it, until that's when contracts finish, isn't it? These guys that we've got. I mean, you'd like to think that this is happening behind the scenes now. Who's staying, who's going.
The windows are planned for months. You read. I was just reading a piece in the paper today about the transfer, the new chief exec at Tottenham who's come in from Arsenal and what he did at Arsenal and how they planned transfer windows 8-9 months in advance. Because you were going to do it over a period of time. So there is a little bit of urgency behind it. I appreciate the window isn't open yet, unless you're interested in the Club World Cup. But you'd like to think that there is a plan there, but whose plan is it? Because Kevin Thelwell's taken his plan, his 2,000-point plan, up to Glasgow Rangers, hasn't he? So where's our plan? Where's the Everton plan?
Do the club need to know that, or should we just get on with it? Do we need to know this? I mean, I know
we don't. We
don't.
We don't. People have said to me historically, and it's a very fair criticism. You don't need to be told everything. I don't. I absolutely don't. But let's make some signings. Alcaraz, great, but we know we've got 11, 12 players out of contract and loanees. We know certain ones have come back. We do have some gaps. We want to be competitive. We're all excited. We're optimistic. The season finished strongly. We just let's get some signings and let's understand where we're going. And at the moment, it's kind of blind faith, isn't it? To an extent, it's blind faith and optimism that's taking us.
Yeah, that's an excellent way of putting it. I was going to say I'm still sceptical, and I think we're right to be sceptical because when has it worked before? If we've just sort of sat there with our sitting on our hands and waiting for something to crop up, and then we're sitting there on the last day in September, scramming running around and hoping that you get a glorified great final day that we had when Lukaku, Barry, McCarthy came in.
That was the day.
It's quite sad how great that day was when it sticks out like a sore thumb, given the recruitment that we haven't had since then. But things need to be put into place, and action needs to be gathered now. And I'm willing to put faith into them. We've not seen them, we've not had them yet. I'd love it if they were sort of silent about ownership. I like that idea. Again, the clown we had before them loved to come out and loved to talk to Jim White and sort of get his mouth around, and certainly looked like he's delving into getting players in as well. These guys, I've said it a few times, I think they look like the real deal, but nonetheless, they've still got to act on it. When it comes to a difficulty, when things further down the road do start to not look like we want them to go, then that's people start screaming at them, thinking, do they actually give a shit because they haven't said a word about Everton yet?
Well, I'll tell you what they could do. They could take the What the Papers Say page down off the bloody website. That's what they could do. Because that is just stupid. It's absolutely
strange.
Stupid. And the second thing they could do is I know I touched on this off air with you, but if you go to the club website, and probably by the time this goes out, people will have corrected it because maybe they'll have spotted it. But if you go to the club website and you click on club and then you scroll down past academy and partners and you go to people, you get a 405 page not available error. And this is Everton Football Club. No, Steve was. He was removed yesterday.
Yeah. Well,
you can tell me that I'm wrong for not being, you don't need to be told, Rodger. Why should people tell you what they're doing? But can my football club please have a link of who the key people are on a page, on a website that works and that's up to date, that doesn't include people who've left? It's not too much to ask, surely.
Maybe it's getting the 404 because they're updating it right now, which is bad website practice, by the way, because if you're updating a page, it shouldn't 404. I'm just being a bit of a website nerd here, but it's a little bit shoddy that you shouldn't be having pages like that, sort of getting that error message. It's still we still feel very much in a state of flux, don't we? These new owners have come in. They've had time. They've had a lot of time to sort of settle in now and maybe get a plan in place, which they might have and we don't know about. But I don't know. Yeah, it feels like the summer can pass you by really quickly. Can't
Yeah.
it? Suddenly it's August, and I've said on previous podcasts we cannot waste another August. Just before
sorry, Les, I was just going to say, are we getting to a point, or will we get to a point where how many times we've been rightly critical in years gone by that we've been heard silence? Silence is good for us now because we sort of don't know which direction we're going in. Like I said, more than happy for them to sit there and not say a word as long as everything's sort of chugging along at a decent pace and we're going in the right direction, recruitment and everything else that's going on there. Fine, you don't have to say a word. It's immediately as soon as something goes wrong. For instance, you miss out on a signing, you get. I think we were talking about this on the recent mailbag. You've got Manuel Fernandez who comes for the tour, or Witsel coming on a tour, or infamous Riquelme sitting on County Road, and everybody's talking about that. But when it doesn't happen, that's when people start kicking off big time, and rightly so. As a fan of a football club, you are going to when you're expected for things to happen, and the club just don't come out with anything. We've spoken many times about the lack of communication there. I think it's a fine line that they've got. So, I'd love it. I would absolutely love it if we don't even know who these people are. Obviously, we do know the names and what the business is about. But in Everton-wise and Everton terms, quotes on the 404 page, I'm more than happy to hear all that stuff. And that's all we hear from them as long as everything else is running smoothly. It's not going to run smoothly. No, there's no football club that has everything run smoothly. Even I mentioned the glorified Brighton, glorified Bournemouth. There's still things that happen. It's just natural the way businesses work, isn't it? But I think it's a fine line for, say, if we get to the end of August and we're still looking for players, then I think the daggers will be out and people are saying, why haven't we heard from these guys? How much? Where's the money? Where's the player entered money?
Yeah, I think the thing is, like you say, it becomes an issue when things start to go wrong, and we've not really had a chance for things to go wrong as yet. And I think but I think in the clubs you mentioned, that there's people doing stuff behind the scenes there. That something's happening. We don't actually know, because all we know is we've got all these players out of contract. It's a big sort of time of change at Everton. There's people leaving, like you said, Purdy and James Vaughan. They're going. Stelwell's gone. We don't know who's coming to replace them, so we don't actually know if anything's happening. So you can take it for granted that clubs like Brighton and Bournemouth and pretty much every other club in the league who've got an established setup and have been able to operate as a functional, normal football club, not like the basket case that Everton FC has been in the last 3 years because of PSR and everything, amongst all other stuff. At these clubs that they've got people in the background and they're functioning as a normal football club. It's business as usual for them. It isn't for us. And I think, like you say, Rodger, we don't need to know who these people are. We do need to know that something's happening, though. And I don't think we know that, do we?
No, but if I'm a parent of a kid, 7, 8 years old, 11, 12 years old with a bit of talent, and I'm looking at the various opportunities for him in the Northwest, and I see that, I read a story on the 23rd of May that tells me the head of the Everton Academy, Gareth Prosser, is moving on next month, so June, to some other role. And I'm told that James Vaughan, the head of Pathways, is leaving. And then I go to the Everton website and those two pictures are still there. I'm thinking, well, shall I send him to Blackburn, or shall I send my kid to Liverpool or Man City or Man United? This is where it all starts. This is where everything starts with the academy and getting that talent in. Look at Arsenal and what they're bringing through now. Look at what City have brought through. Look even what Liverpool bring through, Manchester United bring through consistently. That's what it starts with. And if that external impression, which is why the website's there, to give a window to interested people, not necessarily fans, but parents of kids who might want to go and good enough to join an academy, that gives a very poor impression. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Dave, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the key term that I think's been sort of underlying idea we've spoken about here is that blind faith comment that Rodger made there, because that's where we are really. If you sort of take away everything that we need, everything that we have in line to go and do, the underlying thing is blind faith, which I'm fine with. For now,
it's what keeps us fans. It's what keeps our loyalty. It's what
It is.
started Grub Streets. It's what.
Yeah.
That's what's kept the club up for 3 years. Fumes, blind faith, call it what you will. Loyal fans who are never going to turn their back on the boys in blue. But if you want to progress, you've got to give them more than that.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right there. And you're never going to get what everybody wants, are you? With owners and whoever. You see, batshit crazy clubs come out and say how much money they've got to spend, because the obvious reason why you don't is you don't want clubs you're going in for players who are just going to say, well, we know you've got all this. Like Mashiri, we know you've got all this, so you're not getting this player until you've paid every penny you've got in your arse pocket. And I feel that I'm content with that blind faith, because it'd be something. Look, it I don't know how I'd describe this, but it's going into a relationship where you've been badly hurt previously, and that's the general feeling that I have here. It's hard to put yourself back into an emotional state when you've been hit so hard in previous relationships. Is exactly what's happened to us. You think how many times Everton have been shit on, and how many times we've been shit on as fans. I think it's only natural to have I'm not going to sort of dip my toe into the water too much yet. And that's nothing against the new owners or anything like that, but I just think a natural feeling that I have with this is that I want to see some actions as soon as possible. And again, Rodger, you're absolutely right. It's only natural as fans that you want to start seeing these things come to fruition. The blank slate is there, as we've spoken about often. It seems like a cliche thing to say, but it really is there. And now the club's got to go and fill it with the loads of positive things that we can continue thinking about, because we're in that decent momentum at this moment in time, aren't we?
Yeah, I think the one thing we can't do is get too impatient. I mean, it's easy to do. We've only got Alcaraz through the door. We know there's loads of players leaving. There's a couple whose contracts haven't been sorted out yet. But I think we could have given the impression here that we're kicking off and we're sort of saying, what the fuck are these new owners doing? They've been in this long and haven't done anything. And it feels like
we wouldn't kick off.
No, it's not our thing.
That's not what the Blue Monday, despite the title, that's not what we kick off on all the time, is it?
I do think, though, like I said, my only concern is that we don't know what's going on. And like we say, we don't need to know the ins and outs of who's doing what. We just need to know that the people are there doing stuff. And I'm not sure that they are, because we just don't know. And I think that's my issue. Anyone got any final thoughts before we wrap up on anything we've spoken about today?
Well, I mean, should we all sort of give them a deadline? Should we give them like an actual deadline, an actual time, as if we? What did you say?
11:15. 11:15 tomorrow. A report on my desk, or I'm going to go and tell the teacher.
Blue Monday deadline day. I'm going to propose to everyone. Let us know when you've listened. When will you start become worried about the football club if the owners don't even realise who they own? Especially that new Roma badge. Where's our badge? Where's our badge? Where's something different that we've got right now? I know no one wants to change the badge, by the way. I'm only joking there before someone kicks off on me.
Well, you say no one wants to change the badge. That's a whole different kettle of fish. I quite like the one in the 80s, the 84, 85 badge.
EFC, just a letter. Yeah.
I love that one. I mean, the other thing we've got to get serious
the new owners have got some great ideas if you listen to this.
Brilliant ideas. Of course they have. Look, with the other thing, so what if we qualify for Europe? We're not going to be able to play in there if Roma qualify for Europe. So, who's looking into that,
Yeah. Well,
joint ownership,
the fellas on the website, 404's looking after that.
I'll tell you what,
405.
For next week, we'll do a bit of planning right now. For next week, we will look into this two-club model of ownership and the ramifications for Europe, and we'll have a little look into that, I think, for next week, because it is intriguing, and it'll see how we may have more of an idea how it's playing out for Crystal Palace there. So yeah, we'll pull at that thread amongst others next week. That'll do for this week's Blue Monday. As ever, thanks to Rodger and Dave. Thanks to everyone who's listening. Got a little bit of housekeeping for the byline. It's going to be a little bit later this week because Paddy Boylan's still on holiday.
Disgraceful.
He's like Judith Chalmers, that fella.
Is he doing some scouting? Has he been spotted with Albert Goodmanson? That's what I want to know.
I think that's it. I think that's who he's away with, Rog. Yeah, so that'll be a little bit later this week. As ever, if you're listening on the podcast, do leave us a rating and a review. And if you are listening on the podcast and you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that, because we're approaching 5,000, which is pretty decent. I think it's going all right. But yeah, we need more subs on that, so that would be lovely. And if you are watching on YouTube, please do leave us a comment and we'll get back to you on that. But yeah, as ever, thanks to Dave, thanks to Rog, thanks to everyone who supported us. That's been it for this week's Blue Monday. Up the toffees.